NFTs? What the hell?
We're seeing this rapid explosion of the NFT space, more explosive than anything we've seen in the history of art before.
Is it about value? Is it about money? Is it about excitement? I mean, I don't even know what it's about.
They're selling JPEGs that I didn't think had any value, and in that 1 second, I made $25 million.
If it was NFTs, I wanted to have the best NFTs.
I haven't heard of a company going from 0 to $4 billion in under a year.
You know, I mean, it's like the gold rush, isn't it?
We're exciting, we're fresh. Get some cryptocurrency, get in the game.
All kinds of shenanigans going on.
The stunning collapse of a leading cryptocurrency exchange is
Bitcoin is down nearly 75% from a year ago.
Luna becoming effectively worthless overnight.
The world is a complete disaster. You would think that NFTs would be worth zero, crypto would be worth zero, all these things would die, but they didn't. They survived.
Through NFTs. Within 30 seconds, $1.5 million was raised to charity for Ukraine.
I was the first hard rock female musician to mint and sell an NFT on the blockchain.
I don't know, it would be some mind fuck.
It would start a romance.
A comedy, thriller kind of vibe, I would say.
If it's a thriller, right, there's got to be a villain.
Morph into a horror film.
A dark comedy of some sorts.
And maybe after the credits, it would go back to a romance.
I've always believed that you make art for people who haven't been born yet. You know, and you're kind of thinking about the future in some way with art. I suppose since the very beginning, I've always questioned art and money. I suppose when you're very young, there is no money. So you come into contact with art first of all, but it's still transactional. So you're giving paintings to your parents, to your mother. You go, "Here's, have this," and she puts it on the fridge with the fridge magnets. And so that's the sort of idea of, you know, I can make this thing and it has value, but that's not money. But then very quickly it becomes money.
With bidding fast and furious, this Warhol silkscreen $200 $1 bills eventually went for more than $43 million.
I think Warhol was the first artist who made it okay for artists to make money. If somebody came up to you in a bar and said, "Why do you make art?" and you said, "For the money," they would go,
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to Sotheby's and this historic sale. Damien Hirst, beautiful inside my head forever.
I remember when I sold a piece for $1 million, you know, I bottled out. I thought, oh, maybe it's not worth it. It was the first time, really, because up to that point, I was like, I didn't give a shit. I was just like, art's more important than money. You know, fuck you, everyone can kiss my ass, I don't care, I make art, buy it for what you want. And then when it was $1 million, I was like, oh shit, is it really worth it? Without Warhol, I wouldn't have been as playful with money as I have been. I think that was 2016. I had an idea that I started thinking, what if you made a handmade thing that was like a painting, but it was lots of them? I realised if you have enough, they become like notes and they can change hands. And how many could you make where it could act like a currency? It was going to be just a physical art project, but about money. And that was really the birth of the currency. But as we were doing it, you know, in sort of 2016, 17, we came across NFTs and went, oh, what's that? And then as we studied it, we went, hang on, we've got to pause this project and really take this on board.
I grew up in the 80s in the Pacific Northwest. At that time, the influence of punk and metal was brewing in a very unique way. The punk reference is important for a kind of bottom-up approach and a kind of anti-hierarchical approach. That scene had a big influence on my creative thinking, for sure. So I'm a longtime media artist. In the 90s and 2000s, I was making installation works. My whole adult life, you know, from adolescence till now, has been the whole process of the world becoming digital and more digital. You know, and so it gets digital and then it gets more digital and you think it's done, but it keeps getting more and more. In 2012, I really started to get into Bitcoin and really tried to understand it. And it's the invention of digital uniqueness, digital scarcity. We had this notion of something that couldn't be copied, that was unique. I had it and you didn't have it. And if I gave it to you, you would have it and I wouldn't have it anymore. Then I thought that there had to be some way that that could happen for digital art too. I saw in the blockchain itself something that looked like artistic provenance. And that was the idea that kind of like drove me in 2013. You know, and so that was kind of this abstract idea, and I just really wanted to see what that thing would be, trying to see that come to life. Quantum, the first work that I used with this idea, is this really beautiful abstract animated pattern. We've got this kind of mysterious, you know, pulsing star as the first one, which is, you know, it can stand up to the challenge. I put it on my web server. I put a tweet out about it. All that stuff had to exist first, and then there was the blockchain part. So is the NFT the artwork, or is the NFT the blockchain record? You know, what are we talking about? I do genuinely believe that Quantum is the first NFT. It absolutely is a digital artwork owned by a blockchain record. It's an NFT. When I made Quantum in 2014, I knew it was an important idea at the time. And so I saw it as a big deal. Most other people did not see it that way. It didn't really seem like it was answering a need that people had. In 2017, you know, I was, you know, kind of had, you know, stepped away from it, you know, and that's when Kitties was the project that really, you know, got people's attention.
Kitties was a project that we did in 2017. It was intended to be an experiment that would teach us what blockchain was capable of. It was a game. And it was a game where you would go and buy game pieces that were these cute little cats. And each cat had a unique appearance. They had different colors, they had different styles of fur, they had different tails. Each had their own personality to them that would be a combination of all of these different attributes. The cats are property. Although they're digital things, they're freely tradable. One of the features we had in the game was a marketplace where people could choose to buy and sell kitties. Once you had 2 of them, you could choose to mate them. And if you bred 2 kitties together, they would inherit genetics from each of their parents. You'd pick one of them to be the matron and one to be the sire. They would
actually see them mating?
Oh, no. It was all very abstract. After the time period is over, you'd have a little egg, and you'd click a button to hatch an egg. And when the egg hatched, you'd have, you know, a new kitty. We had next to zero marketing budget. We had word of mouth and a crazy idea.
What Ethereum really needed in 2017 to really kind of confirm its value and how it was going to change the world was a killer app. And that killer app came in 2017 in the form of a cat game called Crypto Kitties.
It captured people's imagination in the crypto world. And I think most critically, people who had never thought twice about engaging this technology before suddenly really wanted to give it a try. I think hundreds of thousands of people signed up in that first week. The problem is that the Ethereum network itself wasn't able to scale to that number of users. There were only maybe 10,000 simultaneous users at any given time, and the network was completely overwhelmed. It was virtually unusable for about a week. It collapsed, but from success, not failure. There was no secret, especially in the wake of CryptoKitties, that the blockchains needed a fundamentally new approach to scaling in order to support millions of users, let alone hundreds of millions or billions of users. And I thought to myself, well, we need a way to talk about these things. And I'm writing this document, ERC 721, for other engineers.
ERC 721, which was just was a standard for the NFT token. When you have a standard, they will be instantly sort of interoperable when it comes to running on platforms like OpenSea or wallets. It works with everything else in the crypto universe. And you have liquidity.
I went to Roham, the co-founder of Dapper Labs with me, and I said, hey, we'll call these things non-fungible tokens. He's like, that's the nerdiest thing I've ever heard. No one's gonna refer to them as non-fungible tokens. And I was like, dang, he's right. I'll shorten it to NFT, and we can have this discussion, and hopefully the product people will come up with a different name that people, they can use for regular, end users. I created the term non-fungible token, or NFT.
Non-fungible token.
Everybody on the street, you could tap them on their shoulder and say, hey, have you heard of NFTs?
All holders of NFTs go through a phase of every party they go to, every meeting they're in, they try and explain NFTs to outsiders. And they quickly become party bore.
I knew the words, but I didn't really understand what it was.
So it's a unique piece of information stored on the blockchain.
And I checked it out and my mind just leaped out of my ears.
Really just proof of ownership.
A record that lives on a blockchain.
Just trying to think of okay, I got one.
There is no space in the digital world. There is only time.
Easiest way I can explain this is I have a shirt that I've had since university.
It's more than just a smart contract that assigns scarcity to a digital asset.
And an NFT is a special marker of a time.
But my shirt I've had since university, and I've worn it at a number of really big events. That's a terrible analogy. Let me do that again. Sorry, let me think of a better.
We keep it simple. So an NFT is a digital artwork.
And it can be bought and sold and traded.
Being able to trace and track the provenance of the work.
You don't own the underlying asset necessarily, but you own, or you can evidence ownership of, and that's where I get slightly lost.
It's the mark of the time of many people's attention meeting at the same point.
Proven legal ownership on the blockchain, that is the concept of non-fungible. They are not the same. That's still a terrible example. This is why I've stopped doing it in the pub, you see.
I overheard a bloke the other day trying to explain to his mate what an NFT is, and he made a right dog's dinner of it. Non-fungible. It's just a geek's way of saying unique or one of a kind. The token part, that's the encrypted data on the blockchain. It's your certificate of authenticity that proves the date and time you spent the dosh on the digital file. Now here's the tricky bit. The NFT seldom contains the digital file for the artwork that you bought and adored. The token typically contains a link to a file on a server which is kept off the blockchain. The rest of the world can still view and copy the file, but you own the token and all of the bragging rights that come with it. You still confused? Another drink?
Once you've launched CryptoKitties, you don't have to call IP holders, they call you. NBA Top Shot was by far the biggest consumer-facing product that we did at Dapper Labs. 1 million people have signed up on a single day, 100,000 people coming to our site. This brought a bunch of people into digital collectibles who had never been into blockchain or NFTs before. Each Top Shot represents a moment in a game. It's a video clip of a moment in a game, typically involving one star player or another. A lot of people have likened them to digital trading cards, where you're owning a piece of the game.
Once digital things could be owned, I kind of sat up and I thought, oh, I like the look of that. I live firmly in the physical world, and NFTs and the digital world are kind of like a new thing. So even though I know and I've researched it, I've looked into it, and I know that physical art and digital art are all art, I still sort of feel, it's a bit like being indoctrinated into religion or something at a young age.
The big night for NFTs at Christie's. That set of CryptoPunk NFTs sold for $17 million.
Obviously, I knew about CryptoPunks. As soon as I looked into NFTs, you hit CryptoPunks. A CryptoPunk is an antique already.
CryptoPunks came out in like 2017, and it was just sort of a quiet project that most people didn't know about or pay attention to for a long time.
CryptoPunks were free. To claim CryptoPunks in 2017 was actually quite a hassle. I was drawn by both the generative nature of the project, but then I was also drawn by this value proposition of proving ownership of a digital asset. And humans tend to really index on things that are the first. Well, Kevin McCoy's work came way before, but this is the first that happened at scale.
The CryptoPunks set so many of the standards that are still used today of this, profile picture project, as it's called now. So creating a kind of base image that has all these sorts of graphical variations, attaching rarities to those, kind of probabilistic rarities to those things.
There were 88 zombies in the original collection of 10,000. And on the day of claiming, in June of 2017, I claimed 34 of those zombies. I was buying CryptoPunks as gifts for $20 and $30 a year after they were released.
2021, suddenly everybody was interested in NFTs, and it just got a lot of press and attention.
It crushed it at 17 million, and the NFT community went wild, saying that price was too low. In fact, they thought it would go much higher, given that one of those was a rare alien.
I believe at the peak, one CryptoPunk, one generic CryptoPunk, or what we call a floor, I believe was selling for $600,000 a piece at the peak. Now you see people that are on Twitter using the CryptoPunk as their profile picture. It becomes the status symbol, inadvertently, that you were early or that you've spent a lot of money. It's one or the other, right? Like, pick your poison.
Sort of like this badge of honor if you have a CryptoPunk, because it means that you were a savvy investor and you got in early and you were lucky. Once NFTs took off and CryptoPunks became a big thing, there were all these people that had their own NFT collections. They were all copycats.
I think people from the outside looking in and thinking that this is all very absurd. My father-in-law, he's an astrophysicist. He started reading news articles about the dollars involved. I think for him it was a sign of the end times.
Now, if the hype is to be believed, the digital art world is in the grip of a revolution, which is changing not only how it's bought and sold, but also ideas about the kind of art and artists that we value.
In 2018, 2019, I created the Chromie Squiggle simply to demonstrate how much variety can be guaranteed in generative minting technology. The Chromie Squiggle was never going to be an artwork on the platform. The Chromie Squiggle was just to prove what the platform could do. There is a heartbeat there.
I think when you look at the early history of NFT projects, whether it's CryptoPunks or CryptoKitties, they often used kind of generative algorithms to create these large editions of work. And then came art blocks, which was a revolutionary step change for the generative art market.
An art block's artwork is an algorithm. It starts as an algorithm and it stays an algorithm. And that algorithm, anywhere from 30 to 3,000 lines of code, are stored on the Ethereum blockchain. The artworks are not created until the moment that they're purchased. With a typical NFT project, the artist mints an NFT with the content in it and then makes it for sale. With art blocks, when the collector comes, they purchase a new, never seen before iteration of that artist's algorithm in the form of an NFT. Some artists pour their soul into the technicality of the algorithm, in that whittling down of bytes and characters into this minimal amount of code that can generate such explosive outputs. Someone like Tyler Hobbs and Dmitry Cherniak had such an acute understanding of what generative art was and how it worked. They were the ones that created this trigger point where people got it. There's a lot of overlap with the currency and the world of generative art. The fact that the titles were created using an algorithm, and just the randomized nature of the dots on the paper. I assume with 10,000 of them, there was no sense specifically as to which dot went where. It almost becomes like an algorithmic artwork.
A lot of people in the physical art world hate NFTs, and a lot of people in the NFT world hate physical art. So there's a kind of real polarity. The absolute clincher for me about it was when I spoke to people in the art world and they just hated it. It's like, I mean, that's the thing that's sort of driven me always, forever, when people say you can't do that. I love asking the question, why not? So then you go, great, watch this.
The premise of the currency project was that there would be 10,000 physical pieces of art and 10,000 corresponding NFTs. I knew almost nothing about NFTs.
I had no prior experience in NFTs.
I didn't have any knowledge of NFTs and didn't have any NFTs and didn't truly know what an NFT was.
All I knew about NFTs were that they were pictures or they were videos.
If you want to own a currency, then you would apply for the raffle. If you were successful, you were given the opportunity to buy a currency NFT.
I'm a night owl, so I'm always up quite late. I think the email came through around 2 o'clock in the morning. Oh, you'd have thought I'd won the lottery. Well, I had won the lottery because it was a lottery.
When I was successful, I was over the moon. I wanted to be a part of the space, you know, having a passion for art.
My husband and I, we both applied for the raffle and we both got in.
Once we brought in the element of an NFT, we realized pretty quickly that we were going to make everybody have to decide what they were going to do, keep the NFT or keep the physical.
I very nearly didn't apply. I saw the NFT as being a bit of a fad and a bit of a hurdle, but I thought, okay, I'll buy this and then I'll exchange that for a physical at the first opportunity that comes along.
All the people who are successful get an NFT. You then can redeem your NFT for an actual artwork. And if you do that, the NFT will be destroyed. My manager, I remember him saying, this is a work on paper, basically. He said, what do you think it's worth? And then I would say, oh, I think they're worth like 10,000. He said, yeah, great. So let's sell them for 2,000. And that was for me like, uh-oh. Because, you know, you look at it and you go, Harland Miller and Tracy Emin and all these other artists, they sell their prints for more money than mine. And it's like there's a kind of artist ego gets involved.
I thought, well, you're never going to get this opportunity to own a Damien Hirst physical piece for $2,000.
But I think that decision early on was like the magic to the whole thing and made the whole thing work. I just don't think it would have been such a big buy-in, you know, and it's like I don't think people would have got as excited. I've always been sort of obsessed with art and money. and wondering about why, you know, coins use sculptural relief on them. Why notes have always got the, you know, great etching techniques. You know, they use visual art because, you know, you couldn't convince someone that a piece of paper was worth anything if it was blank. It has to have some sort of like human aspect to it or artistic aspect to it. You know, it's like once it's art, you can believe it. You know, it has value. These works start with a handmade piece of paper where I have a watermark in it of my head. It has my signature, then it's got a hologram on it and a micro dot.
I was fortunate enough to be selected and I jumped at the chance. Back in 2017, I first became really involved with kind of cryptocurrency and starting to dip my toe into it.
I think I was a little bit cynical about it. The NFT for us was a route to get a physical Damien Hirst painting on the wall.
People were given 1 year. They had 1 year to make the decision whether to keep the NFT on the blockchain or to burn the NFT from the blockchain and take the physical.
In the crypto landscape, when we refer to burning an NFT, we could actually send it to a blank address that no one can ever access again. And that process is called burning an NFT. And I like the fact that he's actually utilized that same terminology to actually physically burn the actual paintings, should you decide not to exchange the artwork.
My manager phoned me up and said, "You do realize you're going to have to burn loads of artworks, don't you?" And I was like, yeah. But then in my mind, I thought, I'm not going to have to burn loads because nobody's going to pick digital art over physical, or not many people.
You know, if you do nothing, you just hold on to the NFT. You have to do something affirmative, i.e. burn the NFT to get the painting. There was a way that you could essentially enjoy the ride until you decided to swap it for the painting.
Everybody involved in the project has owned an NFT. So we made that happen at the very beginning, holding or not holding, whichever we want to call it, a digital artwork.
You applied for a raffle, a number of people were selected for the 10,000 pieces. When the currency first minted, so when it's first released, you need to download a wallet, which is where you hold your crypto, where you'll pay for the transactions. And also your NFT link is in that wallet. Once that's set up, you can go to HENI's. And this is all the NFTs that are owned by all the different holders, including my own. And I can see my NFT there, which is clearly owned by me. I can then download a high resolution image of it, and I can use that as a screensaver or print off a copy or whatever I choose to do. I can zoom in because that there is my NFT.
It just felt good, really, to to make people have to discuss it, to make people live with it.
Having the Damien Hirst NFT opened up the whole rest of the world of NFTs. So I started to investigate other projects, and suddenly you realise there's this whole world of art and community and innovation that you had no idea was there.
There's 15,000 people registered for this event. This is the biggest NFT event in crypto's entire history.
We're exciting, we're fresh. Come and see technology you've never seen before. Get some cryptocurrency, get in the game.
With this project, we're using art to educate people on the history of Bitcoin. I'd say there's probably about 50 to 60 people working on the Smashtoshi Collective. They're making a book, which also has a digital version.
That's a real diamond in the middle.
If you own the NFT, that's the ownership in the book. Bitcoin is the OG, it's the original. It's given birth to various different other innovations, one being NFTs.
NFTs as an idea relies on the blockchain. And the blockchain was invented by Satoshi Nakamoto with the Bitcoin software. Satoshi created a solution to the problem of copying in a digital world. He created digital uniqueness.
This animation is one of the artworks in Smash Soci's project. It represents the building blocks of Bitcoin's blockchain. There's a piece representing the first time that Bitcoin was taxed as property by the IRS. There's another piece. It's about Kim Jong-un and North Korea basically getting around the sanctions and using Bitcoin.
Satoshi Nakamoto successfully disappeared. No one knows who it is. To set it up in such a way that you're never identified after the fact, how do you have that skill, that discipline to kind of remove yourself is remarkable.
I made a work called Portraits of a Mind, which was 40 paintings and 40 NFTs that were bound together. It's an abstract portrait of Satoshi Nakamoto told through the very first version of code behind Bitcoin. Each work has its own location that is of historical importance to the history of crypto. One of these locations is Sealand, which is a former cypherpunk data haven on this old oil rig. And we went out there to create an exhibition and bring the work itself and the NFT to the location that it represents. The Portraits of Mind was the first NFT that was ever auctioned at a major auction house, which was involving a painting and an NFT in one specific artwork. And the response that Kitties received really kind of turned them onto the NFT space.
Every artist I know, we're all getting asked to do NFTs. You could just tell the whole thing was like, you know, totally gaining momentum. My son came up to me and showed, he said, he was looking at art, we were talking about art, and he was like going, yeah, I don't get this art, you know, physical art stuff. And he said, oh, you probably think this is crap. And he showed me Beeple on his phone. I was like, no, that looks cool, I like it. But I didn't really know who he was.
A digital artwork by a relatively unknown American artist known as Beeple has sold at Christie's for nearly $70 million.
Christie's auction for digital artist Beeple coming to a close.
Carl, help me. Carl, help me understand. Help me. I'm relying on you and Morgan to explain this to me. I can say non-fungible. What is a non-fungible token? But that's about where my understanding ends.
Where the fuck are we? That's a good question. We are in Charleston, South Carolina. So the work around me right now is a version of the piece that sold at Christie's for $69 million. I think the thing that is lost in that sale was that I was doing this work for 20 years before this. And there was a bunch of things kind of like leading up to this, and sort of a growing popularity in my work and sort of growing fan base to the point where by the time that sales happened, I had millions of followers.
People from India, you know, would look up to Beeple and just through Instagram. And they were so excited about Beeple and so, you know, interested in him. So I was like, okay, who's this guy?
I didn't go to art school. I went to school for computer science. I was doing freelance work. Concert visuals for Justin Bieber and Nicki Minaj, Eminem, Ariana Grande. I was also making art just for myself that nobody was paying me for, just because I wanted to do it and I loved doing it. So the everydays are a picture that I've done start to finish. I started doing a render every day since 2007, May 1st, 2007, until present day, still doing them. Throughout each year, I've kind of like changed the focus of what I've wanted to learn. In that sense, there's kind of this duality between it being these individual artworks and being the part of this one giant overarching project, which has always had the same rules throughout the 15 years. A picture done from scratch, start to finish, each day, and post it online. I had built a following on social media, but to the traditional art world, I was completely unknown.
It was very exciting to kind of discover him. I felt like it was a native internet artist, Beeple was. What I thought was very interesting was, it kind of was the art of, this age. That's kind of the world we are living today, right? Like, it's not about just agreeing with it, but, it's the meme world, right?
People have been making digital art, which was all online. I was thinking, when people talk about the art world, I was like, well, there's so many art worlds. I was like, what art world is this?
I learned of NFTs in October of 2020. My fans kept coming up to me and sort of like emailing me and messaging me, hey, you should check out this NFT thing. You should check out this NFT thing. And it took a while for me to get it. I thought it was some weird crypto thing, and it was like, I don't think this is like for me. I don't know what this is. And then one day I went on Super Rare and I looked at the top selling people on Super Rare and I recognized them. And it was like, oh, these are names I know. And they're selling stuff. They're selling JPEGs that I didn't think had any value for tens of thousands of dollars. And I thought, well, I have more following than all of these people, so if they could do that, I think I could do this. Politics is Bullshit was the first NFT that I did about 2 weeks after learning of NFTs. That was an edition of 100 that we gave away for $1. With my work, I had a built-in community that was far bigger than anybody else in the space.
I'd seen his work, and I was following him on Instagram. And so I was looking, I liked the images. Once I got involved in the community, the Discord, it's like I had no clue what one was or anything, so it's like, I think we've had to learn everything from the bottom up. Once we got into the Discord channel, it just blew my mind. And I just suddenly realized that it was this, you had to kind of invest in it.
I wasn't an active member on Discord at the start. I think it was just Discord was another app. I had Telegram, having Discord, it kept going off and there was loads of pinging, which was quite annoying essentially.
Discord never stops. The HENI Discord is busy 24 hours a day. There are people all around the world who are currency holders.
I got a link to the Discord, which I'd never used before. And so I signed up to that right away, jumped on there, read all about the project.
I would just lurk and watch what people were saying.
Daily, there is this debate on art and the relationship between art and money and your individual drivers and why you collect art. Is it because you generally like the aesthetics? Is it because it's a great store of wealth? Is it because it makes you look clever or wealthy to your friends?
Everything is discussed on Discord. There is, I think, a really healthy balance between discussion of the project. So there's lots and lots of discussion about the currency and are you going to burn your NFT? Why? But there's also lots of joking, there's lots of daft gifs.
I did become addicted to Discord. Yeah, it was addictive, because it is a really you create bonds.
Being on the Discord, I mean, you watch it, you go on there. I mean, I go and have a look around, but not as myself or anything. I kind of like in one world, I sort of hate everyone until I'm proved otherwise. Whereas with the community, I kind of I've gone the other way and I see the good in everyone.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The unique language in the space, it derives from the actual traditional financial market.
I am the person who just buys and then I hodl. We're called hodlers.
You've got diamond hands.
Diamond handing, which is holding on to something for as long as you can.
Get rid of all the paper hands. That's the people who just sell for what everybody else perceives as too little.
They won't be called a paper hand in a polite way. It is slightly derogatory.
There's lots of talk about FOMO in the space, which is fear of missing out. People type "wag me" a lot when they're being excited about a project. We're all going to make it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
LFG is just let's effing go, and with a rocket, because like we're going to the moon.
Then the converse to that is not going to make it. So NGMI, people type that. You know, if someone does something really silly, not going to make it.
The Lamborghinis.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Getting wrecked is when you lose all of your investment.
One of the sayings that I never heard of until I started using Discord was whale. I just thought it was an animal. A whale is one of the big holders of all artworks within the crypto world.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard that one.
It's called the currency. I think Damien Hirst intended for them to be traded. I think that he saw it as, or certainly I see it as a bit of a social experiment into how people assign value between physical art and digital art.
I mean, I think the Hirst piece in particular is performance art. You know, this is not, it's not a community of people gathered around a piece of art. It's a community of people that have almost become the art.
The currency is very similar to when I made 1,000 Years. You put all these elements together and you imagine it in your head, you know, and you draw it on paper. But then once you put it together and it's, you know, and it's got the live flies in it, and you push the box in and you kind of get out and you shut it. You know, it can't be unmade after that. It's like once you've made it, and it's like the Frankenstein moment. You kind of think, oh my God, what have I done? What have I set in motion?
So the ongoing debate that we have with that piece about, do you take the physical? If you keep the digital, what does that represent? Does that make you greedy because you're doing it for financial reasons? Or does that make you slightly mad because you're effectively doing it for potential utility and you don't yet know what that actually is?
In the traditional art world, if you buy art just to flip for a profit, it's kind of frowned upon. Whereas in NFTs, that's, for many people, that's what it's all about. Everybody's doing it. Everybody is encouraging everybody else to do it.
This is one of my favourites. It's by Mad Dog Jones, and I loved it as soon as I saw it. This was bought at auction at Sotheby's. The total price was $250,000.
33 is one of the coolest collectors I know, and one of my favorite supporters for sure. And he bought a piece of mine called Visor.
We all gotta live, and we're all going to die.
And a really, really cool piece. There's art collectors that come from the traditional art world. There's people that are only in it to make money. There's people who are in it only to collect art and never sell. I live in this really kind of natural world, and this is where I grew up. There's all kinds of animals out here. There's eagles, there's bears, moose, wolves. I saw a coyote the other day. I got pickerel in the river. I got this little guy. He's my little compadre, Diablo. I always kind of think of it as like the salve to the digital world. The cyberpunk, dystopian, futuristic world was always kind of like the opposite of where I was. So it was always so intriguing. You're living in nature, you're living in the forest, but you have these little portals into these like crazy, colorful worlds. I think that takes over the imagination. As soon as I saw this crypto art, this NFT movement beginning, we were all just kind of flabbergasted. It was always such a grind, and then we'd be like, wait, we can actually sell our own art for real. It was just really exciting.
There was a time where if you came in, you were almost guaranteed to make money. And so digital art has thrived. Millions of NFTs have been created.
The first boom of the NFT space has really been focused on artists, and I think maybe that the second coming of NFTs will be focused on musicians.
And now you own Death Row.
Yes, sir.
You acquired it. Congratulations on that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Thank you, bro.
That's so fire.
Yes, sir.
And what, you want to make it an NFT label, I saw?
I already did that. I'm signed to my label. I'm signed to Death Row Records, so I'm the CEO, the artist, all of the above. So I'll just ask myself, hey, Snoop, is it okay if you do NFT? Sure, do whatever you like.
So I've been working with Snoop Dogg for close to 20 years. So all of a sudden, I see this thing, NFTs happening, and I start to really, one thing really resonates me, and that's digital ownership.
How did you learn all this shit about NFTs? Because
My
you're
son,
you're on it.
my son.
Cordell?
Nick Adler. Well, mainly Nick was the first one that brought it to me. Nick was always pushing the line on doing this and doing that, and then
I brought it to Snoop, and I tried to explain it to him. And he looked at me very suspiciously, and I could tell part of him was intrigued, but part of him was like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And that's where, his son Cordell, who happened to be in the room, was really great at kind of helping me get across to Snoop.
How many artists do you hear complaining about, we don't make money off our YouTube videos? We don't make money off our streaming. The label won't let me go. I can't do this. I can't do that.
If an artist can create a music NFT with his friends or his producers or his or her production team and put it out from day one, they're cutting out a middleman.
I was the first hard rock metal musician, female musician, to mint and sell an NFT on the blockchain. I first came into the studio when I was signed to Virgin Records. So much history. There's been incredible records mixed here. Everybody from Fleetwood Mac to Bon Jovi to Muse was mixed here. If the walls could talk in this studio. Death Row Records was here for a bit. There's still bullet holes back there. NFTs became another way to bring our fan base more into the story. Get them more activated with the characters in the world that we're building. The first NFT that I did was for this song called Wake the Dead. It was a way to tell the story, show the artwork, show the characters, get you introduced to the music all at once. NFTs kind of came out of the pandemic, actually, because if you're not touring as a band, you're not making any money. Before the pandemic, we tend to be on the road a lot. Road dogs. The amount of revenue is a lot greater on one show than in millions and millions of streams, which might take you 2-3 years to make. We're just not eating anymore,
And no matter what your taste or preference in music,
the minute that music became digital, all of a sudden, because it could be copied innumerable times, it could be shared innumerable times, that relationship to music, the idea of owning music, was broken.
We've come to expect unlimited music, all the music you could possibly want for the price of a coffee every month.
With innovations like NFTs that are coming along, there's going to be new forms of digital consumption that can happen.
You can link this stuff to IRL utility, and it makes a lot of sense. Buy this NFT, and then it gives you VIP access at our shows. If you collect an NFT of an artist, it's kind of like you're betting on the art of the person that you think is going to be in the game and is going to be doing great things in the future.
As soon as the currencies were minted, we were all watching, and there was a secondary market straight away, and they never went below 2,000. Very quickly, people were doubling their money.
And then the value went, I can't remember, I think 10 grand was hit pretty quickly.
I was talking to my friends, I was like, okay, if it hits $20,000, I'm just gonna sell the NFT and I will take that money. The next week they were selling for $20,000, and I was like, well, let's see how far this goes. And they continue to rise, and it really made me question, maybe this NFT is what I want and not the physical.
They were going for like 40 for a while.
That was making a lot of people want to hold the NFT because they could see it going higher and they didn't feel that the art would be worth that much. So if I'm honest, right at the beginning, there was that, gosh, where's this going?
Eventually they were selling, you know, for $60,000, and I was very tempted at the time just to sell it and be done with the project, but there was still a little bit in me that really wanted to own the physical.
At the beginning, there was lots of speculation about will people value the drip count on the paintings? Will people value the distribution of colours? Will people value the number of dots that overlap? None of those things seem to have made any difference at all to the value. And the thing that's made the difference isn't anything to do with how the art looks, it's to do with how it's named. This thing started to emerge where people were valuing the number of characters in the name. So there's currency pieces called he and we. They were valued really highly because they were one word in the name and only 2 characters. If you ask yourself the question, why would somebody pay thousands of pounds more for an NFT that's essentially the same but only has 1 word in the name instead of 2 or 3 words in the name? I don't think anyone can answer the question. I think that's part of the social experiment, isn't it?
About 3 months in, one went for 170,000. That was because it had 1 word title and there weren't many 1 word titles. For the person who spent 170,000 on one of those pieces, you know, are they going to be regretting that and kicking themselves, or is it going to have a higher value than that in the future? You know, it's just hard to know. I think that the prices were sort of going a bit haywire. You know, I mean, it's like the gold rush, isn't it?
Christie's approached me and they were like, we want to do this auction with you. And I was like, okay. And I had just hit, literally on January 7th, 5,000 days of everydays. So I was like, I want to do the 5,000th day. And what the 5,000th day image is, it has Buzz Lightyear's like lactating, and like there's all this weird Mickey Mouse is like all bloody, and Trump and Michael Jackson. And it's a pretty challenging image. And they were like, maybe not. Maybe let's not do that. And I was definitely like, okay, if they don't do that, then what we're gonna do is we're gonna put all of them into one giant collage of all 5,000 days, and that's what we're gonna do.
We're gonna get this one. We gotta run up to it. That one. A lot of these are kind of a mix of sort of like autobiographical, but also some of them are things that happened throughout the world. Here's some pictures that were done during the like George Floyd thing. This is a picture when Trump was holding up the Bible. This is the first everyday. This is the very first everyday. This is the first one a year later where I started using the 3D program. So the one that I made on the wedding day, that was actually when I was doing photography. That is this one. It's this little thing me and my wife made. It's called Green Bean Jr.
It's pretty special to me. You can pick out the pictures of our wedding day, when our kids were born. I mean, all of the big milestones of our relationship. And the first time I saw all of them on a canvas, I teared up. It was beautiful because it really was a timeline of our life.
To be honest, I am very, very thankful that they said, no, let's not do that 5,000 days. Because I think it would have made people focus on that one day and that one image instead of the entire project. So from the time I learned of NFTs in October 2020 to the sale, which was March 2021, it was about, 4 or 5 months there.
I knew that he was doing something with his everydays and bringing them into auction. It's a little hard to describe, but I feel like it was the everydays that was the first time I felt very connected with a piece of art.
The reason my work made such an impact on him is that when I started those everydays in 2007, he was working off a thumb drive. He could not afford a laptop. And he was literally had a thumb drive that he would take to his friend who had a laptop, do his work, save everything to the thumb drive, and that was all that he had. And in the time that it took me to make these 5,000 days of images, he had obviously, through crypto, amassed a fortune using this crazy new technology.
If you look at the Medicis, they remade the history of art through their patronage of a certain group of artists. You look at the American banking families and industrial families, they did the same. And now you have this new decentralized class of collector that is crypto rich and wants to collect things that really appeal to their own story and their own culture. They're not interested in physical items.
800,000, 850,000, 900,000, 950,000.
Like, you know something big is coming, but you don't know how big.
You know, my whole family was there, my mom and dad. I recognize that this moment could be that moment where it changes people's perception for digital art.
Before the auction actually happened, I was writing the contract for the auction because Mike was actually going to do the entire auction with no contract at all. There was not a single thing saying they needed to pay him or how the thing was transferred. Like, it was just like crazy.
I planned a couple of days before the auction. Actually, I was in Singapore and the auction was in the US time. So I had bought a huge Starbucks coffee, you know, and I sat whole night. I never actually bid until the last 5 minutes. I don't want to signal, you know, that I want to bid big anyways. It's better that I would pay the least in order to acquire what I want, and I don't want to pay a lot more, right?
We're watching the closing of the auction, which closes in 1 hour and 18 minutes. It's already at like a absolutely ridiculous amount.
By the time the last hour happened, the auction was already at, I want to say, $10–12 million. So to be honest, there was no pressure. Like, it was like, okay, if it just closes at $12 million, what the hell are we talking about? Like, this is fucking insane.
The bid had entered the last 5 minutes and I placed my bid, and it was not so high. I don't exactly remember, but it would not be more than, say, 15 million.
It's like winning the lottery in slow motion.
I just want to say congratulations, you're at 25,250,000.
So I'm just sitting here and I would look at the screen and refresh. And Christie's, the website was so glitchy, right? Like, it would stuck up, and I think a lot of people are watching it together. So they had a severe traffic issue on their server also. So suddenly it will stuck up, and if I have to sometimes upbid, it will not go through, etc.
I mean, it was just like a massive amount of like anticipation, just building and building and building.
Jesus Christ, what the f?
I mean, the numbers just kind of jumped. And so as we're still processing one big number, then it'd be another one.
Oh my God!
And there was one point in the auction where it jumped from 25 million to 50 million. And in that 1 second, I made $25 million.
It felt and sounded like a bomb go off.
You know, the bid started jumping, and the last bid I did was for $60 million around. And for a few minutes, I was like, oh yeah, I don't know how long this is going to go. And it felt like, oh wow, where will this end? And I felt that too, right?
What? Oh my God!
And suddenly, after the 60 million bid, what I saw was the timer was, you know, coming to an end, and it said, oh yeah, you won. And I didn't actually believe it. I really thought it was a glitch, you know, on my side. And someone would have taken another bid, probably. So I started refreshing and nothing happened. So I was like, okay, is this over?
69 million?
60 million was the bid actually. And like if you add up the fees and everything, it comes to 69.
There's the Imagine Dragons album art. There is a picture of when we went camping.
Like, I wanted to be the top collector, you know. If I felt like if it was NFTs, I wanted to have the best NFTs.
if one guy's got a lot of money and another guy's got a lot of money and they both want one thing and there's only one of it, it's going to go for a lot of money. You know, you can see that sort of happening with the great industrialists, with the Rockefellers and people like that, you know, back with Cézanne's and stuff, you know. So it's not new to the art world that, you know, these kind of big numbers can cause these, I don't know what you want to call it, is he the greatest artist in the world or is he an aberration? But I don't really care. I just like the fact that it equally excites and incenses people.
This is a piece with our good friend Mark Zuckerberg, who I think might have too much brains for his own good.
Looking back, you can really see the whole NFT movement as a pre-Beeple era and a post-Beeple era. Beeple was the first artist who had a meaningful fan base already.
People, and I'm like calling on people and being like, okay, what should I put in? Okay, this sucks. What should we do to make it better? Okay.
And then I think all of a sudden everybody was like, maybe this stuff we've been just playing around with is like more serious.
I would look at the price that Metacoven paid for that particular work, more in terms of the value it gave the entire NFT space. Really, in one fell swoop, it elevated the NFT space from a very fringe part of the art world to a global news item.
It created a lot of attention around NFTs, right? This huge media storm. All of a sudden, you would see these artists go and buy Ethereum, because you have to buy Ethereum before you mint an NFT, and then they mint an NFT, and they then became promoters for cryptocurrency to their friends and you know, their circle of people that they knew, right? But that brought fresh money into the space.
I think a lot of people think it's a cash grab. You think, yeah, you just can go in there, you know, they see the numbers, they see what happened to Beeple, and they just think, we can go in here, we can make a load of money, we can get the hell out.
The value of that NFT, and a lot of NFTs at that time, did skyrocket. And that does make you feel clever. And that does make you think you've stumbled on something and you're some sort of financial wizard. But if you believe that, then when they go down, because they do go up and down, you have to accept some sort of liability for that side of the trade.
Somebody said, hey, what about an idea that we all came to your studio? And I went, yeah, cool, why not? Great idea. And I got a bit carried away.
So the community is quite, as you'd imagine, it's all gathered behind one thing, and that one thing is the art project, the performance art side of it, rather than the individual pieces of art, in my view. And Damien has described it as a cult, but I don't quite buy that. It's more of kind of a supporting your favourite football team. That's your tribe. You know, that's what you're part of. The NFT, in essence, is actually your membership ticket. That enables you to get into that community and have the conversations about the work or sort of other projects that might be coming along.
Shock and confusion follow a Sotheby's auction of 101 JPEGs of cartoonish apes, sold for over $24 million.
I think there's a perception out there that crazy people are spending hundreds of thousands of pounds on pictures of JPEG monkeys. It's quite hard to explain to somebody who's not involved why it's about so much more than that.
Purchasers gain entry to a very active Discord chat for Bored Ape owners only.
And that sense of belonging, I do believe, drives an awful lot of the NFTs. You know, the tribes that add value to each other, the tribes that other people want to join, that's what fuels the growth in these spaces.
It was incredible. We were throwing an event for 4,000 people who had in common that they were members of the Bored Ape Yacht Club.
I went to Ape Fest in New York in 2022. Snoop Dogg was there, Eminem was there. It was pretty insane.
We went from 4 friends starting this company in February of 2021. And by March 2022, we announced a raise at a $4 billion valuation. CryptoPunks was absolutely a huge inspiration. Number one, there's 10,000 apes. Where do you think we got that number? Frankly, also, there's apes in CryptoPunk. CryptoPunks are like the early cave paintings of the space. They are in so many ways just the foundational project to the NFT space. The idea of being early to a new medium that was opening itself up to creatives on the blockchain, that was what was really special to us. We wanted to make a club. We wanted to have a logo. We wanted to think about what like a Web3 Supreme, a Web3 lifestyle brand could look like.
I'd spent about 10 years working as a trader in an investment bank. I have to say, like, when you see this thing specifically say, this is the Bored Ape Yacht Club, you know that, you don't know what it is, but you know that you kind of want to be, you're potentially going to be a part of something that's exclusive.
In trading circles, it's very common to affectionately refer to yourself as an ape. It's almost like this like somewhat self-deprecating way of saying that, like, you know, boldness sometimes gets rewarded. We wanted to create a club for these people that we had been admiring from afar. My background of my partner Wiley Aronow, aka Gordon Goner, we were storytellers. I was a poet and a book editor. He was a short story writer. We both love surrealism and strangeness in literature. And so we kind of went with our most absurd idea so that we'd have a fun story to tell no matter what. And if somebody was like, what'd you spend your summer doing? It's like, yeah, I made a club for apes on the internet. It didn't turn out too well, but that's okay. We imagine, like, hey, say it's 10 years in the future, and everyone who aped into crypto is now rich beyond their wildest dreams, but they're bored. Maybe they wanted to just hang out in a secret club with other like-minded apes. The Bored Ape Yacht Club was this fantastical dive bar set in the Everglades. While there wasn't this whole long story on the Bored Ape Yacht Club website, we had that in our back of our minds. The project launched on April 30th, 2021.
Under the influence of alcohol, I just started buying them and minting them without really thinking much at all. And I believe the term for that is what we call aping in.
In one crazy night, all 10,000 Bored Apes minted out.
I basically just drained my entire wallet at the time, which was about $40,000, and bought 150 of these apes.
Now we were resigning from our day jobs, and we were 14 hours a day as the founders of the Bored Ape Yacht Club.
Buying apes for me was a little bit like, oh, well, I missed the punks. Maybe I can buy the apes and make some money there.
Bored Ape Yacht Club, without a doubt, was really the first, what's termed a PFP project, a profile picture project, in the way that CryptoPunks never was.
So there was always this thing about what can you get with a Bored Ape NFT. Yuga Labs promised utility for these tokens. That'll get you into parties, you can rub elbows with big rock stars, and then it's kind of morphed into something else where we're gonna have this big game, and ApeCoin will be the currency of the game. You know, they're trying to find a utility for these NFTs.
We really believe that the next big wave in NFTs is going to come from gaming. Other side is our vision of the metaverse. In our trailer for Other Side, you have this character, this Bored Ape, who drinks a potion, and then the world around him shatters and changes. And then this weird little character we call a Coda grabs him and starts taking him on this journey through the sky. Out of nowhere, this floating submarine appears, and in it, there's a cool cat, there's a CryptoPunk, there's a Meebit, there's a Cryptoad, and they're all just kind of waving hello and be like, hey, welcome to the other side. And that was a special moment for us because it was really the proof of concept of interoperability in Web3, meaning that if you own a character in one game, maybe you should be able to play that as a character in another.
Disruptively, they were the first profile picture project that said that the owner could take full copyright of that particular image that they bought. And that was really a profound Web3 gesture of decentralization.
We just wanted to empower people, basically. People started to use their Bored Apes for all kinds of things.
Ape into breakfast!
We've seen everything from coffee brands to alcohol to more than a few marijuana brands, to be honest. Fast food. It's been incredible. It was incredibly surprising to see celebrities ape into the club.
There's a lot of them. There's Jimmy Fallon, there's Paris Hilton, there's Eminem, there's Snoop Dogg, there's Madonna, who else is there? There's Neymar. There are a few lawsuits out there right now which are targeting celebrities, targeting Yuga Labs, targeting FTX, and the premise behind that is that these celebrities are actually advertising or undisclosed advertising things that are financial securities that could go up in value and down in value. And I think that's the concern that regulators have, that these celebrities are trying to pump these NFTs, are trying to pump these crypto tokens.
There were a lot of celebrities that had acquired NFTs, right? And they were posting that on their social media to their millions of followers, and it was never clear how they got those NFTs. They were not disclosing their material connections to the project.
When I got interested in NFTs and for the currency, none of that kind of celebrity endorsement shit was happening.
There's no incentive, you know, we've never bought anyone a Bored Ape or anything like that. It's just people wanting to be part of the club.
Bored Ape and CryptoPunks are, you know, they are brands, they are cultural clubs, if you like, and they exchange hands for extreme amounts of money.
I believe there have been some gold apes that have sold for $1.5 million or something like that.
People are really trying to understand, what is the value? What is the value for these items?
A Bored Ape NFT purchased by Justin Bieber for over $1 million has recently crashed in value to under $70,000.
NFT transactions, about $500 million less than what was raised in all of last year.
The downfall of trading on the platforms is a demonstration of people playing poker with NFTs. Rational thinking starts coming into play and being like, whoa, 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 like this thing, it just doesn't actually hold as much water as you would think.
This is an amazing technology, but it's new and it's evolving so fast, and the pandemic drove it and tons of money came in. So you got a lot of frauds and a lot of scammers and a lot of quick cash grabs that came into it.
There's a whole slew of shenanigans that go on in NFTs. On one particular NFT marketplace, I mean, the vast majority of it turned out to be wash trading, right? And wash trading is when the buyer and the seller are the same person. So I'm setting up another account and I'm buying this NFT that I had, and then I'm buying and selling it to myself, and I can establish the price history for that, and it makes it look more valuable than it actually is.
You know, they came in, they made money fast, and now you're seeing it explode.
One coin, Terra Luna, becoming effectively worthless overnight.
Bitcoin is down nearly 75% from a year ago.
Bitcoin came out supposedly as a response to the 2008 financial collapse. It's actually had its own mini 2008.
It's so funny how this technology that's about transparency has so much obfuscation around it.
The stunning collapse of a leading cryptocurrency exchange is being called one of history's greatest ever destructions of wealth.
It took just days for the crypto exchange FTX to go from a $32 billion business to bankruptcy.
The world is a complete disaster. You would think that NFTs would be worth zero, crypto would be worth zero, all these things would die, but they didn't. They survived.
The market has still priced in more than $70 billion worth of deals.
The majority of NFTs, they're an asset. On the whole, NFTs aren't really what can we do for other people.
The full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine is well underway tonight.
Crypto and NFTs help Ukraine to survive in the first weeks of war before major help arrives.
I was curating digital art for many years, and I was already a part of many large-scale production projects around NFTs. On the day when the war began, my first reaction was to call my family, all my friends, everyone. I was there just 2 weeks before it happened. For the first 5-6 hours, it was paralyzing. That day, later in the day, I opened my laptop. I realized that the best thing I can do right now is go on Twitter and see how can we launch a collection that would fundraise, because money essentially was one of the most important things people needed. Everything materialized extremely quickly. Within almost a day, a group was formed to partner up and create the charity collection. We decided that we would name it Relief. On the second day, the team was formed, a multi-sig wallet, a person who can code, curators that brought artists in, artists stepping forward. Within 3 days, we already have the website, and the same night, over the course of the night, we finalized the actual collection. We had around 30 artists from around the world donate works. Stepan Rabchenko, a very notable digital artist from Ukraine, created a heart. He wanted to showcase unity. Prior to Relief, he worked on a 3D sculpture to be placed on Snake Island that could become a reality. That location was where Russian ships were shooting at Ukrainian defenders, and they told the defenders to surrender, and the Ukrainian defenders said, "Go fuck yourself."
I saw a numerous of NFTs with this image of the soldier that is showing the middle finger. At some point, we've got a CryptoPunk, one of the CryptoPunk NFTs. Eventually, we sold this CryptoPunk for $90,000.
Yuga actually donated early on $1 million in Ethereum to Ukraine's crypto wallet because they just tweeted out that they had one.
The next day, within 30 seconds, $1.5 million was raised through sales.
We've heard that Ukraine had lots of troubles with their banking system because obviously they're in a state of war. So crypto has much more layers of protection against that. It's permitless and it's borderless.
Ukrainian DAO made a good impact, and we're really thankful for Pussy Riot that they sold this NFT, I think, for $10 million and something or even more.
I had a show in Kiev in 2009. It was one of my most visited exhibitions. There were queues around the block. So that was my reasoning when I heard about the invasion for donating a piece to the exhibition at the Venice Pavilion, which was called Sky Over Cornfield.
Probably $250 million donated in crypto. I think it's the first time in a human history, in the history of cryptocurrencies and NFTs, when crypto assets and NFTs were utilized for such cause in Ukrainian conflict and Ukrainian war.
The war in Ukraine was the first moment when this infrastructure could be deployed and actually battle-tested, literally battle-tested, for social good.
So the deadline for the currency burn window is in 6 days' time.
We're now days from that final deadline. So despite my original plan of swapping for the physical on day one, We're now at day 365 or whatever it is, and I need to make the decision. You know, the chat is probably as busy as it's ever been, with everybody in the same boat.
I made my decision probably about 10 months ago that I was going to keep the NFT. So I'm not angsting at all. Damien makes the decision the same time that we make our decision. He has until next week to make his mind up.
I changed my mind a lot all the way through it. The whole year's been totally erratic. I've been backwards and forwards and up and down and all over the place. I've still got to make the same choice as everybody else, and it's like, is it the right choice? Is it the wrong choice? Is everything worth roughly the same? Is it about value? Is it about money? Is it about excitement? I mean, I don't even know what it's about. I was 50-50 for quite a while, right up to the last minute.
Not only did we have a choice to potentially make between whether we exchange the NFT for the physical, but do you exchange on the secondary? Do you actually try and make a quick buck? And that was a very hard decision to make, because even though you love the artwork, this is life-changing money for some people.
If I'd have only had one, I think that decision would have been much harder, but I had more than one. So I knew I'd get a physical work.
Is that called a cheat?
I think that is a cheat. Yes.
So Damien Hirst has to make the same decision as us.
I thought it'd be a cop-out, really, to choose physical, and then 50-50 is a bit of a cop-out as well, so I just thought I'm just going to go all digital, because that's the one I know the least about. It's the road I'm on, which has been the most exciting for a year, and I've got no idea where the road leads. No one's expecting me to go all digital, and then I thought, that's a great reason to do it as well.
So there's going to be an exhibition of all of the currencies, the physicals that are going to burn at the Newport Street Gallery. We'll get to go and see every single physical that's going to be burnt.
I've cheated. I have bought a second, so I will be going both physical and digital. I have one of each. I'll have a horse, two horses in the race.
It is, yeah, this one here. So this is the currency that I've decided to keep as a physical piece, and that's why it's grayed out. The pieces which are in colour are those that are going to be burnt, because the owners have decided they want to keep the NFT and destroy the physical. I've been anticipating this moment, yeah. I wanted to see my artwork in black and white, amongst all the colour.
We still don't know what the NFT will actually bring to those who decide to keep it, but I couldn't let it go, the fact that my artwork that I've been sat on for almost a year would be thrown in a barrel and physically burnt.
I wanted to find the physical painting that's going to be burned. And I've located the rough area, but it's up really high.
Tomorrow, I'm going to burn my 1,000 that I kept of the currency, but we're going to be burning about 5,000 in total. Seeing it's 50-50 now, I think it would have been a lot more people would have chosen NFTs if things hadn't turned the way that they did. There's something problematic about destroying art on any level, I think. It's quite difficult to navigate that. To be burning the currency, it's not comfortable.
Clearly historical connotations when you destroy physical art, which are not positive. Culturally, it's not something you should ever embrace.
I think you can destroy your own art. I think you should be allowed to destroy your own art, because that's what artist studios are all about. If I make mistakes and things I don't like, I can destroy it.
Are you destroying the piece of art when you've got the equivalent left on the blockchain?
If you buy an artwork, do you own it? Can you destroy it?
I wouldn't be able to wrap my head around if somebody made an NFT of the Mona Lisa and then burnt the Mona Lisa.
so much press where they're saying, oh my God, you know, Damien Hirst is burning millions of pounds of artwork.
I don't have any qualms about an artist burning their art. I think art can be many things. I think for this project, the burning of the art is the art, isn't it?
You know, nothing's being destroyed in this burn. It's being created because it's sort of like the final transformation that turns of the physical artwork into NFTs. I don't think the NFTs can exist properly until the artwork's burned.
This is the first time I've actually seen it in person. It does have a very distinctive smell. I couldn't put it out.
The better the title, the harder it is to burn it. This one's called How Bad Can It Be? The dead, the living and the hollow.
I'm really enjoying it. I'm finding it very much a new beginning. The physical's now destroyed, but the NFT itself now lives on. One of my original physicals will go in the fire, much like Damien's doing with his today.
And it's called I'll Never Find Love. Well, this morning I didn't know whether we'd be able to burn 1,000 in a day, so that's good that we managed to do 1,000 in a day. I think that feels good.
You know, I think the project that he did with Currency is super cool and such a great encapsulation of what do we value more, the digital or sort of the physical.
Part of his work is the market and thinking about the market. This either-or question about where does value live, and that the buyer gets to decide that for themselves. Does it live in the digital record? Does it live in the tangible thing that I can hold?
Burning is physical when you want to keep the digital. I think it's cool because it really infuses value into that digital piece. Well, it's like, well, this could have been this.
NFTs are experiencing what Bitcoin and crypto have experienced every year or every other year. Its death is predicted. Its inevitable death is predicted.
Of course we're in a reckoning, and of course that was going to happen. It's been rather nice, you know, the kind of speculators have gone, the hype is gone, and, you know, the community is back to rebuilding or just continuing to build.
You know, when I say art's about making art for people who haven't been born yet, you know, it's like they decide really what's worth keeping and how it's worth keeping and what we're trying to keep.
Prior to all of this, I never really thought about what gives anything value. And now it's something I think about a lot.
I mean, I love the idea of community, but I also love the idea of survival. And when you're surviving, that's the most exciting thing for me. When the world's fucked and you're selling NFTs for not very much money, that's surviving, and that feels, you know, so if things can do that, that's a lot more exciting than one selling for $170,000. Maybe our great-grandchildren will be going, I wish Grandpa had got 2 NFTs.